everyone, Novels Wonderland here. Thank you all for the love and support you've shown me and the channel.
Junji Ito I shall smash Hellstar Remina. Amamiya's Resolve Chapter 80 to 91. Amamiya's Resolve 13:02 words, split the money, split the money. Everyone who saw it gets a share. Don't even think about keeping it all to yourself. How many times does a tragedy like this happen every day? While Amamiya Rin was lamenting tonight's experiences, the Tomies were already clamoring to divide the spoils. Don't try to change the subject. In my memory, although teacher Takagi was a person of corrupted morals who had an affair with a student, he was far from being this deranged. I'm not asking for much, 500,000 yen. I was the one who brought up teacher Takagi's location, and the plan to kill him, and raid his house. Skinning, dismemberment, human experiments. If he hadn't been subjected to your mental pollution, a normal person could never do such things. Don't tell me you want to pin the blame on us and use that as an excuse to hog all the money. Can you all shut up? Amamiya Rin rubbed his temples, his face full of helplessness. Being a buzzkill should have its limits. He was mourning the tragedy caused by these non-human monsters, yet these guys only knew money, money, money. Does the guy who looted money from the villa have the right to complain that we only know about money? Tomi sneered, refuting Amamiya Rin's thoughts. Don't say such stupid things that make me feel it's unnecessary to even retort. Amamiya Rin's heart wouldn't waver because of the Tomi's mockery. Legally speaking, his actions were naturally illegal. But if everything had to be predicated on legality, he shouldn't be here in the first place. I firmly believe that I am walking on the correct path, and to keep walking down it I need money. Amamiya Rin drew the wooden sword from its scabbard, his gaze sweeping across the blade. The edge that had originally been polished with sandpaper was now covered in fine chips. Near the tip, the wood fibers had split, and there were several white dents that looked like they were left from striking hard objects. Near the tsuba, the wood had slightly warped, evidently having borne too much pressure during the recent battle. The wooden sword that had only been sharpened today had turned into this state after just one use. He remembered that the price of this wooden sword wasn't low, but a wooden sword was just a wooden sword. When used in high-intensity actual combat, it was too easily damaged. I seem to have gone off topic. Back to the point, I've been too negligent. Amamiya Rin sighed softly. Even though I thought about restricting Kawakami Tomi and doing these things within my power, I never took action. He slowly pushed the wooden sword back into its scabbard. Although blaming myself for this is too unreasonable, the one who wants to accomplish something is me. The one who failed to realize the severity of the problem, and hasn't taken action until now is still me. The dismembered corpse in the refrigerator, the extensively modified female bodies. The images flashing through his mind made Amamiya Rin's mood a bit gloomy. Are you crazy? You're a cripple still in recovery, provoking a curse every other day. What free time do you have to take any action? Although they pondered every day about how Tomies will never be slaves and bringing down Amamiya's tyranny, hearing Amamiya Rin's thoughts, the Tomies still couldn't help but complain. You idiot, do you really think of yourself as a saint? It's not that noble. I'm just doing what I can. Amamiya Rin raised his head, and looked at the second floor of the villa. The fire was growing larger, glaring red light flickering at the windows. Black smoke and flames billowed upward, dyeing the night sky dark red. Furthermore, the intelligence and abilities I possess, the things I can achieve, should be much more than I expected. In theory, we should be even stronger. He touched his ear. The part that had been bitten off just now had already grown back. Confusion. Before today, he had seemingly remained rational, but in reality, he had always been in a state of confusion. Despite knowing that danger lurked everywhere, he lacked a clear plan for the future. Although there was the factor of still being in the recovery phase, and unable to do anything, it was mostly due to powerlessness. The powerlessness he felt facing this world had given him a tendency to procrastinate. It wasn't until he walked out of this villa that he clarified his goals. I'll give you a 2-day vacation. Within these 2 days, you can go anywhere. Just like you said earlier, form a massive spider web so that the wandering Tomies have nowhere to escape. Having said this, Amamiya Rin paused and continued. Not just a spider web but an intelligence network. Collect various urban legends and folklore for me. I will filter and investigate them to confirm any valuable information. Amamiya Rin was truly, completely getting serious. The Tomies could feel his attitude. This experience had indeed brought about a change in his mindset. For them, was Amamiya Rin's change good or bad? It should be a good thing, right? Amamiya Rin is more likely to die now. Kawakami Tomi's thoughts were full of malice. When dealing with curses and the bizarre, the more courageous one was, the faster they died. As long as Amamiya Rin died, no one would be able to threaten them. You guys. Forget it. Amamiya Rin sighed speechlessly. He took a deep look at the gradually burning villa, turned around, and walked into the dense night. Returning to the Toto General Hospital happened 3 hours later. After leaving over 1,000,000 yen, Takagi's research diary, and the splintered wooden sword in Amamiya Rin's hospital room, the Kawakami Tomi, who had severed synchronization with Amamiya Rin, left with a sour face. Amamiya Rin shrugged and took out a hidden can of black coffee from the nightstand. The nurse wouldn't allow him to drink this, so he had to do it behind her back. Pulling the tab on the can, Amamiya Rin tilted his head back and took a large gulp. The bitter coffee slid down his throat, giving a jolt to his brain, which was exhausted from staying up late. Setting the coffee aside, Amamiya Rin took out the sandpaper and carefully polished the edge of the wooden sword. After barely managing to repair it somewhat, he sheathed it again and flipped open Takagi's notebook. Takagi was just an ordinary high school teacher. There were no incomprehensible terms in the notebook, but Takagi also didn't have any noteworthy research results. It merely opened up a train of thought for Amamiya Rin. Kawakami Tomi would undergo splitting under an unstable mental state, which was equivalent to saying that Kawakami Tomi's brainwaves could influence the body's mutation. If this characteristic was deeply developed, could Kawakami Tomi freely control her bodily changes? Amamiya Rin looked thoughtful as he pulled out a ballpoint pen and recorded this project on the last page of the notebook. Subsequently, taking advantage of the fact that he still remembered some contents of the manga, Amamiya Rin also recorded the important information in this notebook and sorted out the usable factors. Having detailed 5 pages of content, Amamiya Rin carefully reviewed them from front to back. Suddenly, a flash of inspiration crossed his mind like lightning. I've found it, the countermeasure against the dissolving demon. Here, Walnut-chan New History, reincarnated as Mahito. Watch me manipulate everyone. White heavy checkmark. Gain early access to 40 chapters for all stories. White heavy checkmark. Enjoy exclusive content and special announcements. We have set new community milestones. 100 Power Stones equals +1 bonus chapter for all readers. 140 members equals +5 additional chapters for all series. P. Walnut-chan Chapter 81, Swan Song of Sound. 1472 words. If it's sound. There are no ifs. No matter what power is taking effect, the method and medium of its manifestation is sound. In the Junji Ito manga series, there is indeed a story that uses sound as its main plotline, and it mentions how to counter it. Amamiya Rin's pen tip paused on the paper. He carefully recalled the contents of the manga he had read in his previous life. The Ultimate Song of Sound. In The Ultimate Song of Sound, after a female singer broke up with her boyfriend, the boyfriend committed suicide by slitting his throat. However, his soul refused to let the singer go, constantly singing love songs about getting back together inside her brain. This book was first published on Tian Kanxiaoshua-TTKS. TW, providing you with an error-free and orderly chapter reading experience. The female singer was tortured until she could no longer bear it. She released the singing from her brain through her own performance. Anyone who heard the song could no longer escape it if given enough time to develop. It would also become a world-class curse. Just like the Dissolving series, it only required a stage large enough for all of humanity to hear her voice. The female singer sought help from a research institute specializing in noise. A scientist at the institute was studying techniques to combat various noises, and he single-handedly developed a technology that used sound to eliminate sound. Simply put, it was active noise cancellation, but much more sci-fi, and much more magical. However, while that scientist did indeed neutralize the soul's singing inside the female singer's brain, the ghost's voice changed frequencies too rapidly. It ultimately materialized into tangible energy and blasted a hole right through the center of the singer's forehead. In other words, it wasn't that the technology was ineffective, but rather that the ghost actively altered its own sound waves to defeat the scientist's technology. If I can acquire this kind of technology and optimize it, as long as the demon doesn't intervene personally, the success rate of countering Aizawa Yuma won't be too low. Amamiya Rin muttered to himself, rapidly jotting down keywords in his notebook. It wasn't just the dissolving series, there was also the village of spirit music. The method that demon used to control humans was also sound waves. Did all these demons use the exact same tricks? That's right. There was also Siren, and Junji Ito even drew a manga for Siren. What else involved sound? Used record. Theory of the devil? If I can master this technology, the danger level of sound wave type anomalies will drop by 50%. The reason it wasn't 100% was that being able to neutralize the sound waves didn't mean one could deal with the ghosts and demons creating them. But at the very least, there is a solution. Amamiya Rin picked up his black coffee and took 2 massive gulps. His eye sockets were dark and bruised with exhaustion, yet his mood had become unusually exhilarated. Tossing the empty can aside, Amamiya Rin subconsciously picked up his phone. He wanted to use Kazumi Junior's connections to investigate if there were any research institutes specializing in noise within the Tokyo metropolitan area. However, the moment Amamiya Rin picked up the phone, he suddenly snapped back to reality. It was currently around 3 in the morning. How could he possibly get a response if he called Kazumi Junior now? I've really lost my head to anxiety. Amamiya Rin put down his phone and rubbed his forehead, his face full of exhaustion. Going too long without rest, coupled with his experiences over the past few days, made it difficult for him to maintain his usual rationality and calmness outside of Diana. Tonight, he absolutely had to get some sleep. Otherwise, his body definitely wouldn't be able to hold out. Amamiya Rin lay flat on his back. He slowly adjusted his breathing to alleviate the fatigue in his brain and maintain his conscious awareness, while simultaneously reviewing his experiences from the past few days. Those fragments of the past unfurled one after another in his heart like falling petals. Ripples stirred across the lake of his mind, then gradually stilled. All things are impermanent, all dharmas are devoid of self. One should observe them as such. Seeing the truth of suffering amidst blood and light, observing the illusion within love and hate. Previously, when he practiced visualization, it was mostly to observe the rise and fall of his own thoughts and sever the intrusive distractions of Tomi. Now, having personally witnessed the impermanence of life and death, his insight had finally deepened. Time ticked by second, minute by minute. The sky outside the window gradually turned from pitch black to grayish-white, until it was completely saturated by the morning light. Sunlight filtered through the gaps in the blinds, casting bright bands of light onto the floor of the hospital ward. Fine dust suspended in the air floated slowly within the beams of light. Amamiya Rin opened his eyes, the whites completely bloodshot. He rubbed his throbbing temples and propped himself up by his arms to sit up. Picking up his phone and glancing at it, he saw it was already past 7 in the morning. After eating breakfast, undergoing rehabilitation training via a functional electrical stimulation system, and resting for a short while, Amamiya Rin finally dialed Kazumi Junior's phone number. Public Security Bureau, Underground Level 5. In the expansive office, Kazumi Junior sat at his cubicle, writing the report for their previous case. Indu Ranko, the leader of the compilation office, was completely engrossed in watching a live horse racing broadcast today as well. Did she truly have any intention of working? Glancing up at his superior sitting not far away, Kazumi Junior let out a sigh. Right at that moment, his phone suddenly rang. The name displayed on the screen made Kazumi Jr. pause slightly. Amamiya Rin. Why him again? Had another supernatural incident occurred around Amamiya Rin? Kazumi-senpai. Kogure, who was sitting opposite him, looked over curiously. It's Amamiya. Kazumi Jr. clarified for Kogure as he picked up his phone and answered the call. Amamiya-kun, is there something going on again today? Officer Kazumi, is there any progress on the dissolving incident? Amamiya Rin's voice emanated from the phone. Inspector Indu has already reported the information you provided. It's currently still in the verification stage. It can't be helped. According to the records, the risk of taking direct action is too high. For now, we can only conduct an investigation and collect intelligence from multiple sources. We need to confirm whether Aizawa Yuma has a habit of apologizing, and whether the victims who died from brain dissolution had accepted Aizawa Yuma's apology. Only after that will we initiate contact with Aizawa Yuma. Kazumi Jr.'s expression was one of helplessness. He too wanted to immediately formulate a useful countermeasure and issue response policies, but the development of the situation and the operation of government agencies would not change based on his personal will. Regarding the dissolving, I've found a conceptual countermeasure, and I hope you can proceed with it concurrently. After a few seconds of silence, Amamiya Rin's voice cut straight to the point. You have new intelligence again? Kazumi Jr. asked in astonishment and uncertainty. According to his investigation, Amamiya Rin had come to Tokyo from out of town a month ago for schooling. He had been struck and turned into a vegetative state right after arriving in Tokyo, and had only recently woken up. Why would he possess more intelligence than their official organizations? It doesn't count as intelligence, just a line of thought. Since Aizawa Yuma's curse is spread through sound, then, would it be possible to neutralize his voice using the principles of noise cancellation? That's impossible, isn't it? It's not like we can have people wearing noise-canceling headphones every day. There is one place that can do it. I've heard of a research institute specializing in noise that is studying a technology to create sound waves that cancel out specific sound waves. It might be useful. However, I've only heard of it, I don't know its specific name. Although the name was mentioned in the manga, too much time had passed, and Amamiya Rin had long since forgotten it. Moreover, it was also uncertain exactly which city that research institute was located in. Read more, Walnut-chan New History, reincarnated as Mahito, watch me manipulate everyone. White heavy checkmark access up to 40 advanced chapters of all stories. White heavy checkmark receive exclusive content and updates. Help us hit our community goals. 100 Power Stones equals +1 bonus chapter for everyone. 140 members equals +5 extra chapters of all stories. P. Walnut-chan Chapter 82, Mamiya Yuka 1348 words. Producing sound waves to cancel out sound waves. It's too vague. It sounds like active noise control technology, but according to what you said, it's not that simple. Alright, I will look into it. Kazumi Jr. pondered for a moment before replying. The technology Amamiya Rin mentioned was, in principle, just ordinary active noise cancellation. However, he could tell that the technology Amamiya Rin wanted to describe wasn't simply used for noise reduction. It was more like a directed acoustic wave technology meant for weaponry. I hope it helps. Author's note, writing up to here, I hope readers will remember our domain name. For reading books, please look for Tian Kanxiaoshua, TTKS. TW is super awesome. Definitely. Even if we ultimately can't find that research institute, the idea itself provides a new direction, Kazumi Jr. said earnestly. However, could acoustic interference really achieve the level Amamiya Rin envisioned? Kazumi Jr. didn't hold much hope. Without thinking too much about it, he simply recorded Amamiya Rin's suggestion. Afterward, he put down his pen, his tone growing a bit heavier. However, Amamiya-kun, I still have to remind you. It's best to leave these matters to the professionals. You are an ordinary citizen, and a patient who needs rest. You should prioritize your own safety. If you encounter supernatural incidents, it's best to avoid them, or even try not to think about them. In the files I've reviewed over the past few days, there are many supernatural incidents where cognitive awareness itself acts as a curse. Investigating those incidents was the responsibility and duty of their compilation office. If an ordinary citizen were put in danger because of it, it would be a dereliction of their duty. Thank you for the reminder, Amamiya Rin replied. However, after hanging up the phone, his face showed a non-committal expression. It would be great if he could truly avoid supernatural incidents, but the problem now was that he had already provoked the biggest trouble of all. Moreover, when humanity faced extinction in the future, he couldn't exactly just stay out of it. Sighing silently, Amamiya Rin's body swayed. He steadied himself and reached out to open the nightstand next to him, taking out a can of black coffee from inside. The mere 200 grams of black coffee felt inexplicably heavy to hold, and his fingertips trembled slightly as he pulled the tab. Amamiya Rin tilted his head back and gulped down a few mouthfuls. The bitter taste dispersed the lingering heaviness and sluggishness in his brain. However, that drowsy feeling immediately gathered once again, and his temples throbbed with a slight stabbing pain. Amamiya Rin turned his head to look out the window. The morning sunlight was a bit glaring, causing blurry spots of light to float before his eyes. Hold on for another 12 hours. No, just hold on for another 10 hours. It's a bit past 10 a.m. now, I'll sleep at 8 p.m., Amamiya Rin muttered to himself, forcing himself to stay awake. He needed to learn at least one more skill. There were also the Tomies. He hoped they could absorb more knowledge so he could bring it into the dream world. Amamiya Rin gently massaged his temples, recalling the memories of the Tomies. According to his instructions, the majority of the Tomies were obediently attending school. However, attending school was one thing, and studying was another. Going to school didn't necessarily mean they had to study. The Tomies were exactly like that. Once at school, they merely skimmed through the books without trying to understand them at all. Amamiya Rin didn't expect them to pursue advanced studies anyway. As long as they had read them and brought the contents of the textbooks into the dream world, he could study them by himself over a long period of time. A lively and cheerful voice interrupted Amamiya Rin's reminiscence. Looking up, a figure appeared at the doorway of the hospital ward. His vision was a bit blurry, so Amamiya Rin rubbed his eyes to take another look. Standing at the door was a short-haired girl wearing light, casual clothes. She had a bright smile on her face, and a camera hanging around her neck. She didn't look very old, about 20 years old or so. She had delicate features with a bit of boyish charm. "May I come in?" "You are." Amamiya Rin blinked hard, and tossed out the question. The short-haired girl walked into the hospital ward, took out a business card, and handed it to Amamiya Rin. Amamiya Rin took the business card, and held it up to his face. Mamiya Yuka, Giga Publishing, professional reporter of occult incidents. Right, a reporter, the one who does news reports. Mamiya Yuka straightened her back, patted her chest, and said proudly. Then, she quietly tacked on a sentence. "Though I'm still an apprentice right now. A reporter specializing in supernatural incidents. Are you here for the dissolving incident?" Although his brain was sluggish from staying up late, upon seeing the business card, Amamiya Rin quickly understood Mamiya Yuka's purpose. Mamiya Yuka nodded readily, cleared her throat, and began to speak. "Ahem, hasn't there been a bizarre illness going around these past few days? People's brains inexplicably dissolving into liquid. Although some say it's a special disease, I feel it must be a mysterious curse or supernatural phenomenon." "Because you are a professional reporter of occult incidents." Amamiya Rin narrowed his eyes and asked Mamiya Yuka in return. Mamiya Yuka lightly scratched the tip of her nose and laughed sheepishly. "Something like a brain-dissolving sounds, just like the plot of a B-movie. Calling it a disease is a bit too far-fetched, right? That's why I came to the hospital to dig for clues. While asking around, I heard you mention the inside story of the dissolving incident and stated that it was indeed a supernatural phenomenon, so I brazenly came looking for you." Mamiya Yuka leaned forward, staring at Amamiya Rin with glowing eyes, her gaze sparkling with curiosity. I've run to several hospitals, and no one could clearly explain what's going on. Do you know the hidden truth behind the dissolving incident? Please accept my interview. Mamiya Yuka, leaning over Amamiya Rin, gave off a considerable sense of pressure. She radiated enthusiasm. It was evident that this interview was not just a job to her but a passion. Amamiya Rin rubbed his brow, pondering for a moment. Although he had never heard of the publishing company Mamiya Yuka worked for, an occult magazine from a publisher might be more efficient than the police. I don't know the full details clearly either. I just heard that the source of the dissolving is a young man named Aizawa Yuma. That person has a strange quirk of apologizing, and anyone he apologizes to will have their brain gradually dissolve. An entire school in the neighboring city has become victims. The only lucky survivor is a girl who fainted from fright, and didn't finish hearing the apology. Amamiya Rin revealed the intelligence regarding the dissolving in as much detail as possible. Where did you hear this from? That victimized girl. Can you disclose her name? Mamiya Yuka hurriedly straightened up, taking out a small notebook and a ballpoint pen from her satchel. No, I heard it from a friend of a friend. That girl has already fallen into a coma, and hasn't woken up to this day. It's just that a friend heard about Aizawa Yuma's quirk before that girl was victimized. Moreover, I have a police friend who revealed to me that the boy named Aizawa Yuma indeed frequently appears at the scenes of the dissolving incidents. Amamiya Rin shook his head slightly. Seek, Walnut-chan new history, reincarnated as Mahito, watch me manipulate everyone white heavy checkmark read 40 chapters ahead of everyone else. White heavy checkmark get cool exclusive stuff and updates. Let's hit these goals. 100 Power Stones equals 1 extra chapter for the public. 140 members equals 5 extra chapters on all stories for supporters. P. Walnut-chan Chapter 83, The Arrival of Aizawa Yuma 1327 words. A friend of a friend. Author's note, writing up to here, I hope readers will remember our domain name. For reading books, please look for Tion Kanxiaoshua, TTKS. TW is super awesome. Mamiya Yuka nodded, revealing an expression of clear understanding. Amamiya Rin repeated, not understanding Mamiya Yuka's meaning. Stands for friend of a friend, meaning exactly that, a friend of a friend. Mamiya Yuka seemed to have been waiting for Amamiya Rin to ask. Before her voice even faded, she began enthusiastically explaining the concept to him. A rumor spread by word of mouth through a relationship level like a friend of a friend. This is the American folklorist Brunvan's definition of an urban legend. Is that so? Amamiya Rin couldn't hold back a yawn, interrupting Mamiya Yuka before she could finish. Only then did the enthusiastic Mamiya Yuka notice Amamiya Rin's poor condition. Especially those dark circles under his eyes and the bloodshot whites of his eyes. He looked dangerously exhausted. Should I end this interview now? As Mamiya Yuka pondered this, a cell phone ringtone suddenly rang out. It was the phone placed on the nightstand. Amamiya Rin mustered a burst of strength and picked up the phone. The screen displayed an unknown caller. Was it that call from yesterday? Amamiya Rin gestured to Mamiya Yuka, and she consciously covered her mouth with her hands, indicating that she understood. Only then did Amamiya Rin answer the call. The voice transmitting from the phone was indeed the same female voice from yesterday. That person had abruptly hung up yesterday, leading him to think he was being messed with. If this continues, another girl will be victimized soon. Without waiting for Amamiya Rin to respond, the female voice on the phone issued a murder prediction. Mamiya Yuka seemed to have heard this voice as well. Her eyes instantly lit up again, and she silently leaned closer to Amamiya Rin's hospital bed. If I understand correctly, you've discovered that that person is about to make a move again. Glancing at Mamiya Yuka, Amamiya Rin didn't directly state Kawahara Miyuki's name. Yeah, something like that. The voice from the phone was somewhat mumbled, the answer not very definitive. I hope you can give me a straight answer. if you genuinely need help and truly want to stop that person. Amamiya Rin took a deep breath, rallying his spirits, and issued an ultimatum to this unidentified individual. I don't have the spare energy to beat around the bush with you. If you don't intend to trust me, then please just go straight to the police. Although he had entertained the thought of using the vampire to unwind yesterday, Amamiya Rin was just too exhausted now, so exhausted that he didn't want to tangle with this Riddler anymore. Sorry, it's because your condition doesn't seem to be very good either. Exactly, so please be more straightforward. How about this, let's set a time and place, and we can talk when we meet. Amamiya Rin's eyelids were as heavy as lead, the edges of his vision beginning to darken, and his tone grew irritable. Is it convenient for you to meet with me? The female voice on the other end, however, was somewhat hesitant, her words revealing an odd implication. Even if it's inconvenient for me, I can have a friend act in my stead. Regardless, it's better than wasting time like this. Amamiya Rin had no mind to probe further and answered bluntly. All right, tomorrow afternoon, let's meet at a cafe in Kagrazaka. After hesitating for a moment, the female voice finally gave an affirmative reply and an address. The incidents of girls being victimized. Are you talking about the recent serial murders? The moment Amamiya Rin hung up the phone, Mamiya Yuka immediately leaned in close, her eyes flashing with a thirst for knowledge. Amamiya Rin didn't answer right away. He first pressed hard on his throbbing temples. After several seconds passed, he barely managed to speak. It involves personal privacy, so it's inconvenient for me to disclose. With that said, Amamiya Rin fell backward, lying flat on the bed in a manner that clearly dismissed his guest. Staring at the heavy, dark blue bruising under Amamiya Rin's eyes for a moment, Mamiya Yuka realized that she really should leave. Bowing at the waist to Amamiya Rin, Mamiya Yuka pointed to the business card she had left beside him. All right then. If you have any new information, we can get in touch again. Having said this, she didn't wait for Amamiya Rin's response. The man had already fallen into a groggy, half-asleep state. The only reason Amamiya Rin hadn't been immediately dragged into the dream world was because he was constantly receiving a massive influx of information transmitted from the brains of the other Tomis. Mamiya Yuka reluctantly walked out of the hospital ward and took the elevator down to the first floor. Just as the doors opened, a burst of commotion reached her ears. Looking toward the sound, she saw a small crowd of people gathered near the lobby's registration desk. I'm sorry. I'm truly very sorry. It's all my fault. I've caused you trouble. A voice apologizing with profound trepidation rang out from over there. This spectacle instantly piqued Mamiya Yuka's curiosity. However, just as she wanted to walk over and see what was happening, Amamiya Rin's words and warnings flashed through her mind. Apology. Dissolving. Wait a minute. It couldn't be such a coincidence, could it? Mamiya Yuka's heart suddenly skipped a beat. A chill shot up her spine, leaving her scalp feeling completely numb. Driven by a basic survival instinct, even though she couldn't conclude if the phenomenon before her was related to the incident Amamiya Rin had disclosed, Mamiya Yuka reacted with lightning speed. Moving as fast as she could, she pulled a pack of tissues from her pocket, yanked out a few sheets, and disregarding everything else, quickly folded them up and shoved them into her ears. At the same time, she pinched her sleeves with both hands to cover her ears completely. The world instantly went quiet. Aside from the sounds of her own body, she couldn't hear a thing. Feeling a bit more at ease, Mamiya Yuka stood on her tiptoes, craned her neck, and peered toward the crowd. Through the gaps in the crowd, Mamiya Yuka could vaguely make out a figure kneeling on the ground, and standing opposite the kneeling person was a middle-aged man who looked somewhat helpless. It seemed to be about cutting in line or something else trivial. The problem shouldn't have been a big deal, otherwise, the middle-aged man wouldn't have reacted like this. Just as that helpless middle-aged man reached out to help the kneeling man up, his movements abruptly stiffened, and the expression on his face completely froze. Immediately after, the middle-aged man's eyeballs rolled upwards unnaturally. A viscous substance resembling tofu dregs welled up from the bottom of his eyes. That white substance slowly oozed out from the corners of his eyes, his nostrils, and the corners of his mouth. It seemed to carry traces of blood, giving off an absolutely bone-chilling sensation. The middle-aged man's body swayed. Before he even realized what had happened, he took 2 steps forward and then, as if his entire skeleton had been yanked out, collapsed limply to the floor. Wait a minute. Seriously? Is it really such a coincidence? Mamiya Yuka's cheeks twitched uncontrollably. She couldn't help but let out a scream, her body stumbling back several steps until she crashed into the elevator doors. Wentmore. Walnut-chan New History, reincarnated as Mahito, watch me manipulate everyone. White heavy checkmark, read 40 chapters ahead on every series. White heavy checkmark, unlock supporter-only perks and news. Let's reach these milestones together. 100 Power Stones equals +1 free chapter for all readers. 140 members equals +5 bonus chapters for all series. Walnut-chan on P. Chapter 84, Deadlock. Facing a demon head, 1349 words staring intently at the fallen corpse, the hospital lobby suddenly fell completely silent, so quiet you could hear a pin drop. However, after a brief moment of silence, piercing screams erupted throughout the lobby. The onlookers finally realized what had happened. The crowd exploded like a pot boiling over as panic spread. Some stumbled backward in a panic, knocking over nearby directional signs. Others stood frozen in terror, their faces deathly pale. A few, unable to accept the reality before them, even tried to step forward to check. In the blink of an eye, the lobby devolved into utter chaos. Suma-mason. I've disturbed everyone, I'm so sorry. The man kneeling on the ground straightened his posture. Ignoring the corpse right in front of him, he looked around at the crowd, his face full of utmost sincerity as he continuously expressed his apologies. The people who heard his apologies only felt an indescribable muddiness well up in their brains, as if something was stirring around inside their skulls. The movements of the few people closest to Aizawa Yuma were the first to stiffen. Their expressions shifted between horror and bewilderment as a viscous, blood-streaked white paste slowly oozed from the corners of their eyes, their nostrils, and their mouths. In just a few short breaths, more people became victims. Only a sparse few suddenly remembered the dissolving urban legend circulating in the hospital. They hurriedly covered their ears, but a small amount of brain matter still leaked from their nostrils. Mamiya Yuka's stomach churned violently. She hurriedly jabbed her elbow into the elevator call button. As the elevator doors slowly opened, Aizawa Yuma, in the distance, also took notice of this peculiar woman. Suma-mason. Please don't go. I beg you. Please accept my apology. Suma-mason. Aizawa Yuma clambered to his feet. Raising both hands high, he chased after Mamiya Yuka while shouting his apologies. Mamiya Yuka felt entirely creeped out. Before the elevator doors had even fully opened, she squeezed through the gap and forcefully elbowed the close doors button and the floor button. The elevator doors, having just opened, began to slowly close again. Through the narrowing gap, she watched Aizawa Yuma drawing closer and closer, while more and more people collapsed around him. The heads of those convulsing on the ground continuously leaked brain matter from their orifices. This bizarre and horrifying scene made Mamiya Yuka urge the doors to close, unable to hold back. She could practically hear her heart pounding against her ribcage. Just as Aizawa Yuma was mere steps away from the elevator doors, they finally shut tight, cutting off that face completely covered in apologetic fervor. Mamiya Yuka leaned back against the cold wall of the elevator and slowly slid down to the floor. She gasped for air. With her ears stuffed with tissues, she could only hear her own heavy breathing, and the sound of her racing heart. How horrifying. Mamiya Yuka muttered to herself, still visibly shaken. It wasn't that she hadn't encountered supernatural incidents before. Senior Nozaki from the newspaper office had a female companion, Miss Higa, who was a psychic, and Mamiya Yuka herself had witnessed Miss Higa's exorcisms firsthand. But this was completely different. The supernatural incidents Miss Higa experienced, and the supernatural incident unfolding before her eyes had two entirely different vibes. One was a stream of consciousness, the other was a B-movie splatterfest. The elevator stopped at its destination floor. The moment the doors opened, Mamiya Yuka immediately dashed out, sprinting wildly down the corridor. She violently shoved open the door to the hospital ward. Amamiya Rin was still lying on the hospital bed. Hearing the door open, he struggled to lift his heavy eyelids to see the guest outside, but he could only make out blurry double images. That apologizing man you just mentioned. Aizawa Yuma. He's downstairs. Mamiya Yuka hastily rushed to the bedside, abandoning all politeness as she forcefully shook Amamiya Rin's shoulders. Aizawa Yuma. Amamiya Rin's brain was in a groggy haze. It took him a good moment to process what Mamiya Yuka had just said. Why would he be here? Amamiya Rin's eyes snapped wide open as he shot up into a sitting position. I was just about to ask you. Mamiya Yuka's brow furrowed with panic. She didn't want to die young, which was precisely why she had come up to find Amamiya Rin. Could it be? Curses attract one another. Is that really how it works? Amamiya Rin didn't have the spare mental capacity to overthink it. He rolled out of bed, pulled open the nightstand, and took out a can of black coffee. Yanking off the tab, he chugged the bitter liquid in one breath. He then dragged out a backpack and a sword bag from under the bed, slung them over his shoulder, and stood up, leaning on a crutch. There's no time to explain. They couldn't stay in the hospital any longer. Amamiya Rin didn't want to gamble on whether Aizawa Yuma would make his way up to this floor. Furthermore, following the annihilation of Morita Hospital, Todo General Hospital was now about to face its own devastating disaster. Amamiya Rin highly suspected that whenever he stayed in one place for too long, he ended up attracting terrifying curses to that location. You're too slow. I'll help you. Seeing Amamiya Rin's unsteady footsteps and difficult movements, Mamiya Yuka took action immediately. She yanked Amamiya Rin's backpack off him and strapped it onto her own back. Then, grabbing Amamiya Rin's arm, she draped it over her shoulder, half supporting and half dragging him out of the hospital ward. Amamiya Rin wouldn't refuse to help others, nor would he reject the help of others. He didn't stand on ceremony with Mamiya Yuka. Leaning his body weight onto the woman's petite frame and exerting force with his own legs, they quickly left the ward and arrived at the elevator doors at the end of the corridor. However, not a single one of the 4 elevators was stopped on their floor, they had all gone down to the first floor. It was glaringly obvious that the elevators were unusable. Mamiya Yuka gritted her teeth and dragged Amamiya Rin toward the emergency stairwell. In the dim stairwell, the emergency lights provided the only faint source of illumination. Leaning against the handrail, Mamiya Yuka supported Amamiya Rin as they stumbled their way down. Amamiya Rin's condition was absolutely dreadful. The dizziness brought on by severe sleep deprivation crashed against his consciousness in waves, much like an ocean tide. Within his field of vision, Mamiya Yuka's profile, the pale gray walls, the narrow stairwell, everything was slowly twisting and distorting. He forced himself to stay alert, moving in tandem with Mamiya Yuka's pulse. He spent almost all his remaining energy fighting against the darkness threatening to swallow his consciousness whole. After walking an unknown number of steps, Mamiya Yuka suddenly stopped in her tracks and released Amamiya Rin's shoulder. Suma Mason. Astoundingly, Aizawa Yuma had appeared at the corner of the second-floor stairwell just ahead. It was as if he had been waiting there all along. Upon seeing Mamiya Yuka and Amamiya Rin, a joyful expression bloomed on his face. Then, that joyful expression warped into an almost devout look of apology, his gaze locking intently onto Amamiya Rin. Mamiya Yuka clamped both hands tightly over her ears, her body curling up defensively in overwhelming unease. At the same time as he lost his support, Amamiya Rin pitched forward, about to tumble down the stairs. However, in the exact moment he was about to fall, he instinctively adjusted his stance, turning sideways while violently slamming his arm against the wall to steady himself. +40 ch. Walnut-chan New History, reincarnated as Mojito. Watch me manipulate everyone. White heavy checkmark. Read up to 40 chapters in advance, all stories. White heavy checkmark. Access exclusive posts and updates first. Let's achieve our community goals. 100 Power Stones equals plus 1 extra chapter for everybody. 140 members equals plus 5 additional chapters on all stories. P. Walnut-chan Chapter 85, Self. 1492 words. Suma Mason. I've disturbed you. I'm so sore. Aizawa Yuma dropped directly to his knees. Both knees hit the ground, and his forehead slammed heavily against the concrete floor, as he sincerely expressed his apologies to Amamiya Rin. Every single syllable carried a bizarre, viscous sensation, drilling straight into Amamiya Rin's brain. The dizziness intensified. The darkness at the edges of his vision gradually enveloped Amamiya Rin's body and mind. Give up. Give up. Give up, struggling and sink completely into the darkness. As long as you can't hear it, the demon's power will be ineffective against you. If I lose consciousness now, wouldn't I just be a lamb to the slaughter? Amamiya Rin bit down hard on his tongue. The salty, metallic taste of blood spread through his mouth. The sharp pain flared like an electric current slicing through his groggy brain, bringing a brief moment of clarity. I have to risk it. Whether your cells have truly altered my body will be proven today. Author's note, writing up to here, I hope readers will remember our domain name. Tian Kan Xiaoshua keeps you company in your free time, TTKS. TW is super considerate. Without hesitation, Amamiya Rin took out a ballpoint pen. Seizing this fleeting moment of lucidity, he plunged the pen directly into his left ear. A muffled piercing sound was accompanied by indescribable, agonizing pain. Warm liquid flowed down his auricle, staining the collar at the side of his neck red. The world in his left ear fell into a deathly silence, leaving only a sharp ringing and tearing pain. But this wasn't enough. Amamiya Rin pulled out the blood-stained ballpoint pen. Ignoring Mamiya Yuka's horrified gaze, he repeated the process, stabbing it fiercely into his right ear. The same agonizing pain exploded once more. In an instant, it was as if the mute button had been pressed on the entire world. All sounds became distant and muffled. He could only hear the rush of blood within his skull, and the deafening roar of his violently pounding heart. This way, your magic can no longer affect my brain. The intense pain kicked his heavy drowsiness entirely to the curb. Amamiya Rin tossed aside the bloody pen. His body swayed from the agony and blood loss, but his eyes became as clear as the gleam of a sword, and as sharp as its blade. Reaching back, he drew the wooden sword from the sword bag slung over his shoulder. He flicked off the scabbard and held the blade horizontally in front of him. The brown grain of the wood gleamed with a cold, hard luster in the dim light. Aizawa Yuma clearly hadn't expected Amamiya Rin to go to such extremes. He froze on the spot, staring at Amamiya Rin in bewildered dismay. Amamiya Rin took a deep breath. Amidst the intense pain and exhaustion, his body drew taut like a drawn bow. His left foot stepped half a pace forward, the sole of his shoe grinding against the edge of the step with a crunching sound. The wooden sword gripped tightly in his hands rose with the motion. It wasn't a standard kendo stance, but rather looked like a dying beast baring its fangs at an enemy with the last ounces of its strength. With a loud shout, Amamiya Rin squeezed out every last drop of his bodily strength. His feet kicked fiercely off the edge of the stairs, launching his entire body into the air. The wooden sword was raised high above his head. The blade carved a tragic arc through the dim light, carrying the full weight of his body and his resolute killing intent. It cleaved through the stifling air, slashing fiercely down toward the kneeling Aizawa Yuma. Aizawa Yuma subconsciously raised his arms to block Amamiya Rin's attack. The wooden sword chopped heavily into his forearm. Aizawa Yuma let out a miserable shriek. Smashed by this brute force strike, he was knocked backward, crashing to the ground. His right arm bent at an unnatural angle. It had clearly been cleanly broken by Amamiya Rin's strike. Ugh arg. Aizawa Yuma's face contorted hideously. He curled into a ball, clutching his broken arm as he sharply sucked in breaths of air. Amamiya Rin didn't fare much better. After the single strike, the breath he had forcefully held completely dissipated. The wooden sword clattered to the floor as it slipped from his grasp. His body slammed heavily against the cold fire door. Bursts of blackness swarmed his vision, and the blood flowing from his ear canals had already soaked his collar red. Mamiya Yuka stood at a higher vantage point, staring in dumbfounded shock. The shift in the situation far exceeded Mamiya Yuka's ability to comprehend. She stood frozen in place, completely at a loss for what to do, deeply shocked by Amamiya Rin's decisiveness and ruthlessness. Amamiya Rin's strained call snapped Mamiya Yuka back to her senses. She hurriedly ran over and helped Amamiya Rin up. Amamiya-kun, we. Amamiya Rin's vision was entirely filled with double images. Being able to swing that single strike, and for that strike to hit its mark, had already pushed him to his absolute limit. After that one strike, he had not a single ounce of combat capability left. Looking at the dark circles under Amamiya Rin's eyes, and the blood flowing from his ears and mouth, Mamiya Yuka quickly grasped his condition. She immediately hoisted Amamiya Rin up, cast a glance at the groaning Aizawa Yuma in agony, and fled downstairs. Stumbling as they burst through the door of the first-floor emergency exit, the scene in the hospital lobby made Mamiya Yuka draw a sharp breath of cold air. The originally chaotic crowd had silently collapsed onto the floor. Viscous brain matter oozed from the orifices in their heads, cooling into disgusting, foul stains on the ground. Amidst this gruesome mess, a little girl wearing a light-colored school uniform stood out glaringly. She was kneeling beside a corpse, sticking out her tongue, and licking the brain matter off the floor. Hearing footsteps, the girl lifted her head. Her eyes were abnormally protruding, the pupils dilated so widely they nearly filled the entire sockets. The whites of her eyes were covered in fine, spiderweb-like veins, and murky white brain matter still clung to the corners of her mouth. He, my trash of a brother actually failed to stop you. He really is a useless piece of trash. Mamiya Yuka's stomach churned violently, the intense wave of nausea almost made her throw up. She forcefully propped up Amamiya Rin, wanting to bypass the bizarre little girl. Then again, do you really think you can escape? The little girl revealed a grotesque smile, as if she were mocking something. Mamiya Yuka displayed a guarded expression, instinctively reaching for something to defend them with, only to realize that Amamiya Rin's crutch and wooden sword had both been left upstairs. I have no interest in hunting you down. It's my trash brother, or rather, that demon, the little girl scoffed. Mamiya Yuka couldn't help but ask. My brother is a ridiculous person. Since childhood, he's loved slaughtering small animals like snakes and frogs as ritual preparations to summon a demon. One day, he actually did summon an apology demon from the back mountain. He always presses his hands together and stares straight ahead, that's him begging the demon for forgiveness. Every single apology grants him a euphoric pleasure akin to ascending to heaven. Moreover, in that very instant, the evil electromagnetic wave fluctuations between my brother and the demon take effect, causing anyone who hears the apology to gradually melt, starting from their brains. The little girl spoke in a strange, eerie tone. It was unknown what kind of mindset drove her, but she explained the entire origin of Aizawa Yuma's abilities. In fact, every time Aizawa Yuma committed a malicious act, if he took his time and savored the process, this girl would jump out before the victim dissolved to inform them of his abilities. It was just that no one had ever been willing to believe such a completely absurd thing. Oh, right. My brother has another ability. Through praise, he can make the other person's appearance turn ugly, because he's actually praising the demon he worships. You've accepted his praise before, haven't you? Although I don't know why he would praise a man, nevertheless, he's targeted you, and you absolutely cannot escape. The little girl pointed at Amamiya Rin, speaking with distinct schadenfreude. Read more, Walnut-chan New History, reincarnated as Mahito, watch me manipulate everyone. White heavy checkmark. Access up to 40 advanced chapters of all stories. White heavy checkmark. Receive exclusive content and updates. Help us hit our community goals. 100 Power Stones equals +1 bonus chapter for everyone. 140 members equals +5 extra chapters of all stories. P. Walnut-chan Chapter 86, Reversal of the Cosmic Order. 1368 words. Amamiya Rin's head felt like it was going to explode. Author's note, writing up to here, I hope readers will remember our domain name. Tian Kan Xiaoshua has a complete collection of books, read anytime at TTKS. Because he could hear the little girl's voice. It seemed Kawakami Tomi's regenerative ability was truly taking effect on his body. In just a few short minutes, it had repaired the damage to his eardrums. And whatever he heard, Kawakami Tomi could hear as well. What is this ugly girl talking about? Become ugly. Aizawa Yuma. The man Amamiya bumped into outside the bookstore last time. So that's why Teacher Takagi thought the me Amamiya synchronized with was a fake. The thoughts of the Tomis blasted into Amamiya Rin's brain. The complex and intense wills were like a surging flash flood, threatening to swallow his consciousness whole. Hearing the little girl's statement, the Tomis finally realized what was going on. Why was Teacher Takagi completely indifferent upon seeing one of them? Why, oh why did Teacher Takagi view them as fakes? It wasn't because Teacher Takagi could truly distinguish who the real Kawakami Tomi was, and who was an imposter. It was because their appearances had been cursed. Back when Amamiya Rin collided with Aizawa Yuma outside the bookstore, that man's continuous praise wasn't directed at them at all. He was praising the apology demon he worshipped. Not only that, but the apology demon's power had actually traveled through the Tomi network, affecting every single Tomi who had heard the words of praise. This is too absurd. How could such a thing happen? The Tomis instinctively wanted to deny Aizawa Yuma's power, but their bodies were exceptionally honest as they immediately sought out the nearest mirrors. The bathroom mirrors in apartments, the floor-to-ceiling mirrors in shopping malls, the compact mirrors in their purses. Kawakami Tomi ran her fingers across her cheek, carefully examining her reflection in the mirror. However, she discovered absolutely nothing wrong. What's this? I'm still as perfect as ever. Mirror, mirror, who is this person whose beauty rivals the most colorful blooming flowers? That's right, it's me. It really was just nonsense, wasn't it? How could there ever be a day when my looks fade? Unable to perceive any changes in their appearance, several Kawakami Tomis brimmed with confidence, boasting of their own beauty. However, doubt was like a tiny spider crawling along the Tomi network. Even if only a single person harbored suspicions, it would cause all the other Tomis to experience the same feeling. That photographer from earlier actually didn't take the initiative to snap my picture. Yesterday at the library, not a single person came up to hit on me. Unbelievable. But the number of men hitting on me really has decreased. Is it perception? Didn't that man named Kazumi say that Aizawa Yuma's power could affect other people's cognitive abilities? Recalling their experiences over the past few days, their charm truly seemed to have diminished somewhat. Fewer people were hitting on them, the duration of people's stares had shortened, and those obsessive gazes were disappearing. Even though, judging from the attitudes of the people they interacted with, they were still one in a million beauties, the treatment they received was indeed not up to the usual standard. Natural enemy. Natural enemy. That man is our natural enemy. We must kill him. We absolutely have to kill him. We can't let him live. Intense fury, ferocious killing intent, and a sense of dread morphed into a surging undertow that churned within Kawakami Tomi's mind. The Tomis simply couldn't figure out whether their appearances had actually changed, or if Aizawa Yuma truly possessed such magical power. However, they would rather mistakenly kill 10,000 than let a single one slip away. Whether it was true or false, they could not allow this possibility to exist. Let's do this. That's the way. It's the only way. In a flash of thought, the consciousnesses of over 50 Kawakami Tomis reached a consensus within the Tomi network. Amamiya Rin's consciousness was already on the verge of dissipating. His body felt as heavy as if it were sinking to the bottom of the ocean, pressure sweeping in from all directions. His vision, eaten away by darkness, could not clearly see anything. Just then, an unnatural tranquility invaded Amamiya Rin's brain. In merely an instant, a crystal-clear, mirror-like lake reflected within Amamiya Rin's mind. Inhale-exhale. Amamiya Rin's breathing, which had been on the verge of ceasing, was forcefully unified into a single rhythm at this moment, becoming long and steady. Over 50 synchronized thoughts were adjusting this physical shell that had already lost its capacity for self-control. Amamiya Rin's scattering spirit was forcibly anchored. His thoughts turned inward, completely unruffled, like a deep pool in an ancient well, reflecting himself yet remaining entirely unmoved. It was just that this pool of stagnant water was being collectively maintained by over 50 foreign wills. The dual cessation of mind and breath. Entering Diana. It was Kawakami Tomi. It was actually Kawakami Tomi. At this moment, in order to eliminate the threat, those 50-plus Kawakami Tomis had actually taken the initiative to enter a state of deep dhyana. Their thoughts spread toward Amamiya Rin along the neural pathways of the Tomi network, observing Amamiya Rin's breathing, body, and mind through the contemplative realm of the 6 wondrous gates. They recalled and mimicked the techniques Amamiya Rin had once used on them, synchronizing with Amamiya Rin's body and mind across a vast distance. Furthermore, they successfully took over this body. What a detestable feeling! A low murmur rang out from beside her. This voice gave off a feeling that was both unfamiliar yet familiar. Mamiya Yuka couldn't help but freeze. She subconsciously looked toward Amamiya Rin. His drooping head slowly lifted. Those unfocused eyes now reflected a cold and indifferent calmness. Let go of me. Kawakami Tomi turned to glance at Mamiya Yuka, the flat tone revealing an extraordinary sense of oppression. Mamiya Yuka dazedly let go of her hands. She stared blankly at Amamiya Rin, who just moments ago had been so weak and powerless that he couldn't even walk without her support. Yet at this moment, he actually straightened his posture with unhurried composure. He raised his hand, wiped away the blood from the corner of his mouth, and looked at the little girl with an icy gaze. This version of Amamiya Rin gave Mamiya Yuka a sense of unfamiliarity. Even though she hadn't been very familiar with Amamiya Rin to begin with. He, your face will droop and collapse very soon, and you won't even realize it. When that time comes, I'll come and feast on your brain matter. The little girl was still mocking and ridiculing Amamiya Rin and Mamiya Yuka. The viciousness of her personality didn't seem much better than Kawakami Tomi's. That's enough of this boring nonsense. Kawakami Tomi walked briskly toward the girl. His movements no longer held their previous weakness and stumbling. The speed was so fast that Mamiya Yuka couldn't even react in time. The bizarre smile on the little girl's face froze. She sized up Kawakami Tomi from head to toe, seemingly also bewildered by the change in him. But Kawakami Tomi completely ignored the little girl's confusion. Stepping right in front of the girl in just a few strides, she directly reached out to grab her chin. The girl frowned in displeasure and subconsciously raised her hand to swat at Kawakami Tomi's arm. With a crisp sound, what looked like a casual swat fiercely knocked away Kawakami Tomi's extended arm, leaving his entire limb numb from the shock. The girl looked to be just an elementary school student, yet her strength was absurdly massive. Here, Walnut-chan knew history, reincarnated as Mahito. Watch me manipulate everyone. White heavy checkmark. Gain early access to 40 chapters for all stories. White heavy checkmark. Enjoy exclusive content and special announcements. We have set new community milestones. 100 Power Stones equals +1 bonus chapter for all readers. 140 members equals +5 additional chapters for all series. P. Walnut-chan Chapter 87. Demoness vs. Daughter of the Demon. 1500 words. Kawakami Tomi hadn't expected it, or rather, Amamiya Rin had long forgotten that Aizawa Yuma's younger sister, Aizawa Chikumo, was the daughter of the Apology Demon and a human. Her physical prowess far exceeded that of ordinary humans, considering she had only appeared in a few panels of the manga. However, to Kawakami Tomi, this minor detail was of no importance. Inhale. The synchronization of over 50 brains, the simultaneous oxygen supply of the neural network, and the 50-fold realm of the gate of contemplation activated the neural circuits connected to the torso via the cerebral cortex, allowing the numb arm to rapidly return to normal. He, looking to get rough. So naively cute. Author's note, due to caching reasons, please visit the Tian Kanxiaoshua website directly via browser for a great experience, TTKS. TW is awesome, to read the fastest chapter updates. Aizawa Chikumo let out a bizarre laugh, her widely split mouth revealing naked mockery. Kawakami Tomi's gaze was indifferent. The gate of contemplation fully unfurled, making the world before her eyes as clear as cracks reflected in a mirror. Her line of sight enveloped Aizawa Chikumo's entire body, the faint rise and fall of her chest, the up and down movement of her shoulders, the shifting center of gravity in her feet, and even the focal point of her eyes. A beauty like you must have delicious brains, right? I've decided. I'm not going to wait for my trash of a brother to keep playing hide and seek with you. I'm going to beat you down right now and deliver you to my trash brother. Before her voice even faded, Aizawa Chikumo lunged toward Kawakami Tomi. Her feet pushed off the ground as she spread her arms wide, fingers splayed and completely taut. Her posture resembled a wild beast, and her speed was both ferocious and swift. Before Mamiya Yuka could even react, Aizawa Chikumo had already appeared right in front of Kawakami Tomi. It's over. Mamiya Yuka's pupils trembled and she subconsciously almost screamed out loud. However, Kawakami Tomi didn't panic in the slightest. Aizawa Chikumo's actions had already been mapped out in Kawakami Tomi's mind a full second prior. The bend of her calves, the shift in her height, the curvature of her waist, and even the direction her fingertips were pointing, all of these provided Kawakami Tomi with her attack trajectory and precise landing spot before Aizawa Chikumo had even left her standing position. Just as Aizawa Chikumo's fingers were about to touch Kawakami Tomi, Tomi tilted her body. Her heels dug into the ground as her sole slid flatly, gliding backward by several dozen centimeters. Aizawa Chikumo's fingertips brushed past Kawakami Tomi's collar. Missed by a mere hair's breadth, Aizawa Chikumo could even feel Kawakami Tomi's breath falling upon the back of her hand, yet she simply could not manage to touch her. At the exact moment she evaded the attack, Kawakami Tomi had already bent her right elbow and raised her arm, her forearm chopping precisely toward the inside of Aizawa Chikumo's wrist. This was the essence of the Yagyu Shinkage Ryu, the mastery of distance and timing. Neither too early nor too late, it struck exactly at the interval when the opponent had exhausted their strength and was unable to counterattack. Not only that, but the spot Kawakami Tomi struck was exactly where the numbness-inducing nerve was located. Accompanied by a crisp sound of collision, Aizawa Chikumo's right arm trembled uncontrollably. A wave of soreness and numbness even welled up in her palm. Taking advantage of the situation, Kawakami Tomi guided her to the side, using the momentum of Aizawa Chikumo's forward rush to deflect her movements off course. Her center of gravity destabilized, Aizawa Chikumo stumbled a half step and nearly crashed to the ground. Although I have no sword in hand, I do know a thing or two about jujitsu. Although Amamiya Rin had only practiced the Yagyu Shinkage Ryu, it was a rare style that included close-quarters combat techniques. For instance, the Mutodori technical system incorporated jujitsu maneuvers such as throws and joint locks. While he couldn't compare to a true jujitsu master, after years of grueling training in the dream world, Amamiya Rin could barely scrape his way into the professional ranks. The evasion and counterattack were executed in one fluid motion. Kawakami Tomi quickly adjusted her stance, her gaze locking back onto Aizawa Chikumo. Aizawa Chikumo swung her hand back in a reverse slap. Even from such an awkward posture, the power and speed were enough to whip up a gust of wind. Kawakami Tomi immediately pulled her waist back and took a small step in retreat, allowing Aizawa Chikumo's attack to sweep harmlessly past her front. It was only then that Mamiya Yuka finally snapped back to her senses. Amamiya Rin had no weapon. That wooden sword had been dropped on the second floor earlier. Mamiya Yuka subconsciously turned back toward the emergency stairwell, attempting to retrieve the wooden sword for Amamiya Rin. However, just as she was about to enter the stairwell doors, a wail that sounded more like pure twisted pleasure than pain drifted out from the crack in the emergency exit doors. This is bad. Mamiya Yuka's footsteps ground to a sudden halt, her expression shifting rapidly. There was still that guy up there who could dissolve people's brains through apologies. Asking her to go up and grab the sword. She truly didn't have the guts for it. Mamiya Yuka licked her lips anxiously. She surveyed the lobby, which now resembled a portrait of hell, her gaze quickly sweeping over the corpses slumped on the floor, the overturned chairs, and the scattered belongings. Soon, her eyes locked onto a pile of overturned clutter not too far away. And for pole, roughly 1.2 meters long, caught her attention. Its structure was simple, a slender pole attached to a base stand. It looked quite sturdy, and the bottom base could be detached. That's the one. It should be able to substitute for the wooden sword, right? Mamiya Yuka thought uncertainly. But it was better than doing nothing at all. She dashed over in a few quick strides and yanked the forepole out from the pile of debris. On the other side, the battle between Kawakami Tomi and Aizawa Chikumo raged on. Stop dodging. You bastard. Failing to land a hit, and instead getting struck until her palm went numb caused Aizawa Chikumo's eyes to turn vicious. Perhaps earlier she had merely wanted to amuse herself with Kawakami Tomi, but now, her malice was completely genuine. Aizawa Chikumo's left leg kicked off the ground fiercely behind her. Accompanied by a loud crack, she actually stomped several fractured indentations into the solid floor. Aizawa Chikumo charged toward Kawakami Tomi like a wild boar, her arms stretched wide, as if intent on relying purely on brute strength to tackle and pin down Kawakami Tomi. However, Kawakami Tomi had long since captured the trajectory of her shifting center of gravity. Instead of retreating, she advanced. Stepping to the rhythm of the Kasumi steps, her silhouette became as elusive as thin mist blown by the wind, actually gliding right past Aizawa Chikumo's left side. The two bodies crossed paths. Aizawa Chikumo had a look of utter bewilderment. She couldn't comprehend how Kawakami Tomi, who had been right in front of her, had suddenly ended up beside her. Kawakami Tomi, however, didn't waste even a fraction of a second. The very moment they brushed past each other, she immediately shifted her momentum. Digging her heels into the ground, she leaned backward in reverse. At the exact same time, she bent her right arm and ruthlessly drove her elbow into Aizawa Chikumo's side. That area was a part of the human body with relatively thin muscle coverage. Even though Aizawa Chikumo's physical constitution far surpassed that of an ordinary person, taking this elbow strike forced a muffled groan from her lips, throwing her movements into disarray for a split second. Seizing this opening, Kawakami Tomi pressed the attack. Crossing her legs, she twisted her waist and spun around to pursue Aizawa Chikumo. Her left hand smoothly grabbed Aizawa Chikumo's wrist, her fingertips locking onto the joint at the base of the girl's palm. Aizawa Chikumo roared furiously. She violently yanked her left arm back, trying to break free using brute force. Kawakami Tomi didn't resist with sheer force. Following Aizawa Chikumo's pulling motion, she pressed her right hand onto the girl's shoulder blade and gave a forceful shove. At the same time, she hooked her left foot forward, causing Aizawa Chikumo to lose her balance entirely and crash to the floor. Walnut-chan. New history, Re:0, Wrathrout Yandere Emilia watches the projection white heavy checkmark new releases are dropping, plus get exclusive content and updates. White heavy checkmark help us unlock community rewards, 100 Power Stones equals plus 1 bonus chapter for everyone 140 members equals plus 5 extra chapters of all stories. P. Walnut-chan. Chapter 88, Demon appears 1364 words Aizawa Chikumo slammed into the ground, instinctively reaching out to brace herself and stabilize her position. Author's note, kill boredom by reading novels every day, TTKS. TW is super reliable. But how could Kawakami Tomi allow that? Her left hand clamped onto Aizawa Chikumo's bracing wrist, her knuckles pressing into the gaps of the wrist joint. Her right hand pinned the girl's shoulder blade. Using the very force Aizawa Chikumo exerted to stand up, Tomi channeled her entire body's strength, twisting, and then pressing down, in one fluid motion following that momentum. The girl let out a cry of pain. A piercing ache radiated from her shoulder joint. She struggled frantically, her legs kicking against the floor in an attempt to buck Kawakami Tomi off. However, Kawakami Tomi's control over her strength was terrifyingly precise. Her knee pinned the girl's lower back, while her hands controlled the shoulder and wrist, locking Aizawa Chikumo into a physical blind spot where she couldn't generate power. No matter how she writhed, she could not escape from beneath Kawakami Tomi. When Mamiya Yuka arrived with the steel pole from the fore stand, she saw that Kawakami Tomi had already successfully subdued Aizawa Chikumo. Clutching the steel pole, she hesitated, unsure if she still needed to hand the weapon to Kawakami Tomi. Attack her neck. Knock her unconscious, Kawakami Tomi commanded Mamiya Yuka while still pinning Aizawa Chikumo down. Aizawa Chikumo could not be allowed to die. As the daughter of the apology demon and a human, this girl possessed immense physical prowess along with a resistance to the melting power. As long as neural needles were shot into the girl's oral cavity to connect with her cranial nerves, bringing this daughter of the demon into the Tomi network, the danger posed by Aizawa Yuma could be reduced to a certain extent. Let go of me. I'll kill you. I'll kill you all. I'm going to kill you. Chikumo was still screaming and struggling, her small body exploding with incredible strength despite being in the most difficult position to exert force. Even though Kawakami Tomi was using joint locking techniques designed for the weak to overcome the strong, and was pushing the effects of her breathing method to the absolute limit, she was beginning to find it difficult to keep her pinned. Hearing Kawakami Tomi's urging, Mamiya Yuka gritted her teeth. She tossed the fore tubing aside and picked up the detached base of the stand. Steeling her heart, she aimed at the center of the back of Aizawa Chikumo's neck and swung down with all her might. With a dull impact, Aizawa Chikumo's neck was nearly knocked out of alignment. Her frantic struggling came to an abrupt halt, her tensed body instantly went limp. Her eyes, once filled with malice, rolled back until only the whites showed, losing focus. Her small head slumped powerlessly, thudding against the floor. Breathing heavily, Mamiya Yuka cast aside the base, discovering her palms were drenched in cold sweat. She was a university student, after all, and knew exactly how dangerous that spot was to attack. A single mistake could be fatal. She didn't want to be a murderer, but the situation was dire, she had to act. Well done. Kawakami Tomi gave a brief evaluation, nodding toward Mamiya Yuka to signal her approval. She released Aizawa Chikumo's arm and quickly inspected the girl, confirming she was only unconscious. Though her breathing and heartbeat were somewhat erratic, they remained steady. Such a heavy blow hadn't even killed the girl, she truly was a hybrid of demon and human. There was no time to lose. Kawakami Tomi leaned down and squeezed Aizawa Yuma's Chikumo's jaw, forcing the unconscious mouth to hang slightly open. Then, she opened her own mouth. Her throat rippled slightly. In the next moment, dozens of tentacles tipped with needles erupted from her mouth, shooting out in unison and stabbing directly into the interior of Aizawa Chikumo's open mouth. The neural tentacles delved deep into the throat, moving along the palate and pharyngeal wall, piercing the mucosa to burrow toward the depths of the skull base, where the brain and nerves connected. The unconscious Aizawa Chikumo's body twitched involuntarily, as if instinctively resisting this horrific intrusion. But it was already useless. Once Kawakami Tomi's neural threads successfully entered Aizawa Chikumo's mouth without being bitten off immediately, the outcome was sealed. The ends of the neural threads had already pierced into Aizawa Chikumo's cranial nerves. During this brief period while Aizawa Chikumo was unconscious, they would remodel and assimilate her cranial nerves, linking her brain to Tomi's own. Not only that, but cells belonging to Kawakami Tomi were already infecting Aizawa Chikumo's body. Within a few days, Aizawa Chikumo's physical form would also become Kawakami Tomi. Connection complete. As the neural threads vanished once more, Kawakami Tomi closed her mouth with satisfaction. However, it was at that very moment that Kawakami Tomi saw a claw. It was a pitch-black, sharp claw, like that of a bat but far larger than a human hand. The claw extended a single sharp, needle-like nail, and gave a light flick in front of Kawakami Tomi. An indescribable sound rang out. The dozens of neural threads connected to Aizawa Chikumo's brain were severed. The Tomi network lost the presence of Aizawa Chikumo. It could no longer sense her location through the neural threads. Kawakami Tomi instinctively looked up. A massive figure appeared before her eyes, a demon. There was no need for thought, merely seeing that black silhouette, which radiated evil and a sense of profound profanity, naturally birthed the realization that this was a demon. It had a head resembling a goat, topped with 3 curved horns. The horns on either side curved backward like scythes, while the central horn on its forehead stood straight up like a trident. Embedded in the center of its forehead was a mysterious pentagram mark. A tangled, fluffy mane like withered grass covered its face and body. A pair of reptilian, vertical pupils presented a distorted shape, gazing down at her with indifference. Immense bat-like membranous wings were fully spread behind it, casting a shadow that completely enveloped Kawakami Tomi. Merely by hovering there, it emitted an aura that made the soul tremble, like a literal tsunami swallowing the entire space. Light seemed to vanish around it, as if falling into a black hole, and the air in its vicinity became viscous, as if pulled by an invisible gravitational force. The scent of blood that had filled the hospital lobby was replaced by a deeper atmosphere, a mixture of sulfur and ash, coupled with a smell of malice and mockery directed at humanity. The apology demon. Actually entering the fray in person. According to Amamiya's words, a guy like you should be a final boss. Oh right, Kayako is also a major boss. Don't you demons and evil spirits care about the proper order at all? Kawakami Tomi looked at the textbook image of a demon, a mocking smile appearing at the corners of her mouth. The apology demon's pupils constricted as it turned its head to look at its daughter. The severed line, which extended from Aizawa Chikumo's mouth and existed in another dimension, had actually reconnected with the other end after the demon had cut it. Though I don't know how you did it. Is it because you're a demon in another dimension like the Kala? Or is it because she's your daughter and you can directly interfere with her? In his records, you shouldn't be able to act personally. You could only generate evil electromagnetic waves through Aizawa Yuma's apologies, right? Kawakami Tomi faced the demon composedly, reciting her deductions and intelligence. The demon also turned back to look at Kawakami Tomi. Although its expression did not change, the sense of oppression radiating from its body grew even more powerful. Read more, Walnut-chan New History, Group Chat of the Dead White Heavy Checkmark access up to 40 advanced chapters of all stories. White Heavy Checkmark receive exclusive content and updates. Help us hit our community goals. 100 Power Stones equals +1 bonus chapter for everyone. P. Walnut-chan Chapter 89, Visitor from Hell 1371 words. However, none of that matters. Cutting the Kala doesn't matter either, because it will simply grow back. Kawakami Tomi paid no heed to the apology demon's oppressive aura. In the memory fragments Amamiya Rin had provided her, the apology demon was essentially background scenery. In the grand finale, it had become a journalist or possessed one. She wasn't sure which, and single-handedly orchestrated humanity's extinction. Yet it had never once been seen to personally exert its power directly upon a human. Of course, that could be a matter of preference rather than limitation. But it didn't matter either way. Kawakami Tomi had never feared death. Now, having voluntarily entered a state of dhyana, her attachment to life, death, and desire had grown even thinner. It's terribly annoying, you know, she said, her expression shifting into something faintly troubled. Because neural threads are composed of cells, the Kala has already taken on my form completely, including self-healing, regeneration, and splitting. Do you think I haven't tried severing those neural threads? Even if I cut them, they grow back out of my own brain. To utterly destroy what Amamiya calls the so-called Tomi network, I would first have to destroy myself completely. The sacred Kala and Kawakami Tomi, the mutual influence between the two ran far deeper than it appeared on the surface. The Kala's neural threads originally had no defensive capability. In the source material, they could even be severed by a door, and anyone whose thread snapped would die instantly. But because of Kawakami Tomi's influence, the Kalla's neural threads now regenerated even after being cut. So long as Kawakami Tomi was indestructible, so too was the sacred Kalla. And the sacred Kalla ordinarily existed within a subspace that could not be interfered with from the outside. Even if Kawakami Tomi's physical body were burned to ash, she could regrow from the nerve endings within that subspace. Mortals are always so entertaining, arrogant, ignorant, small, fragile, presumptuous. The apology demon finally spoke. Its voice was thin and reedy, completely at odds with its hulking frame. And yet, that is precisely why I am so fond of humanity. It crossed its legs and floated in the air, arms folded across its chest. The oppressive aura it had been radiating vanished with casual ease, as if, upon realizing it was useless against Kawakami Tomi, it had simply decided not to waste the effort. Keep your arrogance. Amuse me with it. Destroying you with my own hands. I'm afraid I couldn't be bothered with something so tedious. The apology demon narrowed its eyes. Its face was a mask of terror, yet the impression it gave Kawakami Tomi was one of cunning slyness. Putting on airs. Kawakami Tomi curled the corner of her lips and raised the steel pole, leveling it at the demon without a shred of deference. You haven't responded directly to me, and you haven't made a move on me or her. Are you trying to hide the fact that you cannot directly affect the material world? Ha 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 ha. God would love the way you think. As would I. The apology demon's twin slit pupils tilted inward in an inverted V, its gaze brimming with mockery. Its lips split all the way to beneath its earlobes, sketching a grotesque smile. When man thinks, God laughs. This demon was a cultured one, mocking Kawakami Tomi with an oblique literary flourish. If you could manifest in the physical world, I'd shove this steel pole up your ass and ram it out through your mouth. Kawakami Tomi's eyes tilted upward at their corners, a flash of viciousness cutting through her gaze. Her voice barely rose or fell, yet the words she chose were direct and vicious beyond measure. He. The Impaler's technique. How crude and how adorable. However, before I deign to take the stage myself, I expect you and my apostle to put on a sufficiently spectacular performance. The apology demon's thin, reedy laughter suddenly exploded outward, like a rusted razor blade dragged across glass. It ricocheted back and forth through the vast, empty hospital lobby, drilling into Kawakami Tomi's ears until they rang. Someone had arrived. Even with the apology demon's mocking laughter filling her ears, Kawakami Tomi had been observing the lobby the entire time. A heavy door opening sound rang out from close behind her, and the light in the lobby shifted with the subtlest of changes. Kawakami Tomi whipped her head around. Sure enough, Aizawa Yuma had appeared. He pushed open the emergency exit door and stepped out from within. His right arm, wounded from her earlier strike, still dangled and swayed at his side. Mamiya Yuka had been puzzling over Kawakami Tomi's baffling behavior from her vantage point. All she could see was Kawakami Tomi suddenly bending down to pin Aizawa Chikumo, then raising her head to stare into the empty air, and finally muttering a string of incomprehensible words. But the door opening behind them she had heard perfectly clearly, and she had spotted Aizawa Yuma's arrival even before Kawakami Tomi had. I am so sorry. Chikumo has caused you all so much trouble. I am so sorry. Please forgive her. At the sight of Aizawa Chikumo motionless on the floor and the apology demon seemingly squaring off against Kawakami Tomi, a look of fanatical fervor broke across Aizawa Yuma's face. He dropped to his knees with a thud, slammed his forehead heavily against the floor, and began to apologize with a voice seething with unnatural excitement. Amamiya-kun. Mamiya Yuka cried out and clapped both hands over her own ears, backpedaling rapidly toward the lobby's entrance. Kawakami Tomi said nothing. She stared at Aizawa Yuma, and her state of Diana shattered completely. Her gaze flooded with murderous ferocity. The hand gripping the steel pole clenched shut with crushing force. You piece of filth. You animal. I'm going to kill you. Like an enraged leopardess, Kawakami Tomi drew a sharp, deep breath. Her chest swelled as she unleashed a furious roar, then she exploded into a sprint directly toward Aizawa Yuma. 20 meters. At the speed of Tomi's burst, it took only a handful of seconds. The steel pole in her hand became a dark streak of light cutting beneath the fluorescent lights, thrusting straight and true at Aizawa Yuma's head. Faced with Kawakami Tomi's thrust, Aizawa Yuma scrambled and rolled to evade, but he clearly had no combat experience. He couldn't break free from Tomi's attack range in time. The steel pole, driven by terrifying force, struck with pinpoint accuracy into the soft tissue just below his clavicle. Bone cracked. Skin swelled. The violent, searing pain wrung a wail from Aizawa Yuma, as the sheer momentum of the blow sent him crashing backward to the floor, the back of his skull cracking against the hard ground. "I am so sorry. That hurts. I am so sorry. Please forgive me. It's all my fault. All of you ended up like this because of me. Forgive me. Please, all of you, forgive me." Aizawa Yuma screamed and wailed, and even amidst his anguish, he did not stop shouting his apologies. But those apologies had already lost their proper effect on Kawakami Tomi. The cranial nerves connected to the daughter of the demon had granted her a certain degree of resistance to the demon's evil electromagnetic waves. Yet this time, Aizawa Yuma's apology was not aimed at Kawakami Tomi at all. The ones he was apologizing to were the dead. Accompanied by his wretched, keening cries, the viscous puddles of liquefied brain matter scattered across the floor began to stir as if life had been breathed into them. The liquid rapidly converged. It swelled and rose. From within each nauseating, gelatinous mass, figures began clawing their way out. Men and women. Old and young. Every last one of them wore the look of the dead, skin an ashen, bloodless gray, eyes hollow and vacant, expressions frozen at the final instant of their death, locked in terror or blank confusion. These people were the victims Aizawa Yuma had summoned back from hell. Walnut-chan New History, Group Chat of the Dead White Heavy Checkmark. New releases are dropping, plus get exclusive content and updates. White Heavy Checkmark help us unlock community rewards. 100 Power Stones equals plus 1 bonus chapter for everyone. Chapter 90, Top 13 28 words. What is this? The supernatural scene before her had given Mamiya Yuka the fright of her life. If a brain dissolving could still be chalked up to some extraordinary disease, then what was unfolding before her eyes right now was something else entirely pure, unambiguous surreality. But shaken as she was, the sight of it all could not suppress the fierce, burning love for the supernatural that lived deep in Mamiya Yuka's heart. This is insane, truly insane. She sprinted back another few dozen meters. Only after confirming that no sound could possibly reach her at this distance did she immediately yank up the camera hanging around her neck, aim it at the bizarre spectacle inside the lobby, and hammer the shutter release like a woman possessed. Click, click, click. The camera lens faithfully recorded every inch of the surreal tableau unfolding inside the lobby. The humanoid figures that had clawed their way out of the liquefied brain matter were now standing upright, dazed and aimless. They looked exactly as they had in life, clothes intact, expressions vivid and alive. "Didn't I die?" After a brief, stunned silence, a young girl murmured softly to herself. "This place is a hospital. What's going on? What happened to me? Wasn't I at school? Senpai Otomo, you're here too. My head hurts so much. My memories." The resurrected dead stirred with unease. Confusion and dread rippled through their ranks in silence. They looked one another over, confirming each other's existence, their memories frozen at the exact moment their consciousness had dissolved. More and more of them rose. They filled nearly half the lobby. Summoning. What kind of nonsense is this? Kawakami Tomi was caught off guard as well. According to the memory fragments Amamiya Rin had shared, wasn't Aizawa Yuma's only ability to melt the brains of anyone who heard his apology. Even though Amamiya Rin had forgotten most of the plot, it was easy enough to reason out. This was the power of accumulated installments. As the protagonist of a series, Just as Kayako's specifications kept climbing and Tomi's immortal body grew ever stronger, Aizawa Yuma's abilities had multiplied with each entry. The power to make someone ugly by affecting their cognition, the ability to summon the dead parents of his victims from hell, the ability to call down hellfire, and reduce a target to cinders, almost a new ability every volume. If it weren't for the Demon's world-ending finale in Volume 5, had Junji Ito drawn a few more, Aizawa Yuma's arsenal would have only kept growing. Everyone. I'm sorry. I'm so terribly sorry. I've disturbed you all. But please help me. I beg you, help me stop him. Aizawa Yuma clutched his fractured clavicle, blood flowing freely, and slumped to the ground. He raised his hoarse voice toward the spirits he had summoned. The resurrected dead turned to look at him. Their eyes were filled with hatred and terror. It's him. I remember. He was apologizing to me. My brain melted. You're the one who killed us. How dare you say something so shameless? You kill us and then ask us to fight for you. I'll kill you. I absolutely will kill you. The dead who had returned from hell had nothing but fury and hatred for Aizawa Yuma. The moment they understood what had happened, they wanted nothing more than to tear him apart with their bare teeth. And yet, some invisible binding force prevented them from acting freely. Though their mouths screamed murder at Aizawa Yuma, their bodies moved of their own accord, closing in around Kawakami Tomi. Over 40 of the dead. Against the total count of victims, that was a drop in the ocean, but this many already dead individuals could bring down even a Mike Tyson. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I apologize to you all. Please forgive me. Aizawa Yuma dropped to his knees once more, utterly devoid of dignity, and prostrated himself in apology before the dead, requesting forgiveness, as though it were the most natural thing in the world. Shameless. Shameless animal. What good is an apology? Go to hell. The dead cursed and raged at him. They'd heard enough meaningless apologies from worthless politicians. They hadn't expected to die because of an apology, and they certainly hadn't expected that even in death, this shameless animal would drive them with a few words of sorry. Cursing him all the while, they surged toward Kawakami Tomi. Can't even rest in peace. You pieces of garbage, would it kill you to stop making my life harder? Kawakami Tomi gripped the steel pole with both hands, her attitude the polar opposite of Aizawa Yuma's. Not a single thought of watching her mouth. Her gaze cut through the gaps between the advancing dead, locking onto Aizawa Yuma cowering behind them. Her expression was pure, seething irritation. After she'd knocked him down with the pole, Aizawa Yuma had scrambled away at speed. For all his pitiful wailing, his movements were anything but slow. His pain tolerance was clearly extraordinary. Don't think for a second that this garbage can protect you. I will kill you. You are something that should not exist. Kawakami Tomi drew a deep breath and leveled the steel pole horizontally before her. Her eyes sharpened once more, and she sank into a state of deep dhyana. Shinkage Ryu Simple Domain. Supported by over 50 synchronized consciousnesses, her senses became a single, seamless instrument of perception. The world around her seemed to slow to a crawl. The movements of over 40 dead individuals observed simultaneously by 50+ minds dissolved into countless clear, readable trajectories. The nurse on the left arm raising at a 45-degree angle, targeting the neck. The suited man to the right front is faster, weight on his left foot. The ugly girl in the school uniform at the back moves stiffly, opening at the waist. Thoughts flashed like electrical current through the Tomi network without a single word spoken. No language was needed. The collective will controlling this body had already reached its decision. A single step and the body slid sideways as if weightless, slipping clean through the gap between two grabbing arms. Simultaneously, the cold steel pole in her hand struck like a viper, tapping precisely against the inner elbow joint of the nurse's raised arm. A crisp snap. The arm dropped limply at an unnatural angle, but the dead felt no pain. Even with a shattered joint, the other arm still clawed stubbornly toward her. But Tomi had already spun away, the steel pole sweeping in a backhand arc to crack against the side of another corpse's knee. That one staggered, lost balance, and toppled only to immediately press both hands against the floor, trying to clamber back up. In the same instant, Tomi ducked, pivoted, and brought the steel pole down without mercy onto the back of an old woman's skull, sending her crashing into the corpse directly in front. Tomi moved with breathtaking agility, weaving through the crowd with clean, efficient motions. The steel pole struck with precision at joints and vulnerable points. Every hit shaved away a significant portion of a dead person's combat effectiveness. She had only a steel pole, the sword techniques of the Yagyu-Shinkage-ryu were unavailable, and she could not exert her full power. And yet the synchronization of 50-plus Kawakami Tomis had unleashed the simple domain at 500% of its normal capacity. 50-plus observing minds left not a single blind spot. 50 layers of breathing methods supplied oxygen through the neural network, dramatically amplifying the brain's reaction speed. Even surrounded by over 40 attackers on all sides, Kawakami Tomi moved as though she had all the room in the world. Even Amamiya Rin himself, at his peak, could not have performed at this level. P. Walnut-chan New History, Group Chat of the Dead. White heavy checkmark. Read 40 chapters ahead on all series. White heavy checkmark. Get exclusive content and updates. Help us hit our targets. 100 Power Stones equals +1 free chapter for all. Chapter 91. Fire Enchantment. 1363 words. So incredible. So strong. Getting to watch a fight this spectacular, dying would have been worth the price of admission. Click click click. Mamiya Yuka kept shooting from a distance, snapping frame after frame, practically huffing with excitement through her nose. She'd never trained in kendo, and she'd never picked up any other combat discipline either. Ask her to appreciate a duel of swordsmanship and she'd normally come up blank. But the fight playing out before her eyes right now, clean, fluid, without a single wasted motion, even she could see exactly how terrifyingly skilled Kawakami Tomi was. Aizawa Yuma, meanwhile, stood there in stunned bewilderment. He simply could not wrap his head around it. Amamiya Rin, a man who needed help just to walk, was fighting like an absolute beast. Over 40 attackers and they still couldn't bring down a single person. Aizawa Yuma began to panic. Suma-mason. Don't lose. Suma-mason. For my sake, use your hellfire on him. Aizawa Yuma's voice cracked with a sob, tears streaming down his cheeks. Suma-mason. Apology after apology poured out in an unbroken stream. The evil electromagnetic waves they carried began to shift and warp, and Kawakami Tomi felt her own body temperature rising. It climbed until it hovered around 40 degrees Celsius, and then it stopped, as though hitting a hard ceiling, a ceiling, however, that was calibrated to her limits, not anyone else's. The dead who had been swarming Kawakami Tomi began to change. Beneath their ashen-gray skin, a grotesque orange-red luminescence pulsed and bled through. Then, without warning, searing flames erupted from their eye sockets, their mouths, even the pores of their skin. The flames engulfed the dead one by one, turning them into howling, human-shaped torches. The heat was extraordinary. When Kawakami Tomi slammed the steel pole across the back of one dead man's neck, the rod itself glowed cherry red in the blaze, and the heat transferred straight into her palm, scorching the skin of her hand. Curses, one after another, tricks coming from nowhere, no way to guard against all of them. So this is what it feels like to be Amamiya Rin dealing with us. Kawakami Tomi quickly wrapped her sleeve around her hand. Her body bent boneless smooth to the left, slipping clear of a charging fire corpse, but the guttering flames grazed her cheek, and several strands of hair curled black and scorched in an instant. The brutal heat warped the air around her. The stench of burning flesh spread in all directions. The dead, wreathed in fire, attacked with even greater ferocity, throwing themselves at her with a suicidal recklessness, spreading their burning arms wide. Kawakami Tomi used her footwork and reaction speed to maintain distance, her wrist snapping the steel pole in a sharp whip. The far end connected squarely with a fire corpse's throat, a powerful strike that shattered its larynx. The burning man simply tilted its head back and kept walking, pressing forward against the pole without breaking stride. In the same instant, the rest of the fire corpses rushed in from every direction, completely sealing off any room to maneuver. Sheets of rising flame merged into an unbroken sea of fire that surged toward her. At that moment, Kawakami Tomi understood, truly felt it in her bones, exactly what Amamiya Rin had experienced facing them. Summoned from hell, impossible to kill a second time. Hellfire that hard-countered her specifically. A cognition-warping uglification curse. And every other power of Aizawa Yuma's, save for the dissolving ability, which only Amamiya Rin even remembered, all of it aimed squarely at her. And that fever from within just now, if she hadn't absorbed some resistance to demonic power from the daughter of the demon, she'd probably already be on fire right now. Baka Yarrow. The curse snapped out of her, and paradoxically, it restored the calm that Diana demanded. The verdict from their collective observation was unanimous: they could not win. Even before Aizawa Yuma had called down the hellfire, they couldn't have won. Amamiya Rin's body was simply too poor a condition, not because of injury, but because of the muscle atrophy and joint stiffness that came from long-term bed rest. Self-healing couldn't fix that. And the weapon was terrible. 1 versus 40 plus undead, even Mike Tyson would drop to his knees, let alone her. And now Aizawa Yuma had added hellfire to the mix. Pressing on any further would mean leaving Amamiya Rin's life here on this floor. If Amamiya Rin died, that was one thing, but what if Aizawa Yuma chose not to kill him? That was the real problem. Only option: retreat. Kawakami Tomi shot a vicious glare at Aizawa Yuma, who had already retreated to the safety of the emergency stairwell. She dropped suddenly into a crouch. The steel pole spun once in her palm and swept low, smashing into the knee joint of a fire corpse behind her. The knee buckled and the corpse went down. Kawakami Tomi surged upright. Fixing her eyes on the direction of the lobby exit, she sprinted forward and launched herself into the air, planting both feet on the kneeling fire corpse's shoulders, using it as a springboard to vault even higher. Her body tucked and spun in midair, legs driving down toward the heads of 2 fire corpses below. Both impacts landed almost simultaneously. The 2 fire corpses rocked back and crashed into the bodies behind them. Several burning figures tangled together as they fell, flames licking at one another, tripping up the others pressing in from behind. Tomi hit the ground rolling, one hand pressing the floor to control her landing. She didn't spare a single glance at the chaos and pursuit behind her. She was already running, the steel pole swinging left and right in red arcs, slamming viciously into fire corpse necks. The fire corpses staggered under the blows. Tomi didn't let herself slow down by even a single step, driving her body through the gaps that opened between them. A wave of scorching heat crashed against her face. A burning limb scraped across her forearm, the fabric blackened instantly, and a searing pain bit into her skin. But Tomi had no attention left to spare for any of that. She forced herself through the burning wall, through the flames, and out the other side, carving a path through the fire corpse encirclement by sheer will and momentum. She burst clear in a single breath, lurching and stumbling as she threw herself down the hospital's front steps, hitting the ground and rolling to bleed off the impact. The way she tumbled, staggering and scrambling, had absolutely nothing graceful about it. Beyond the hospital entrance, chaos had already gathered. Dozens, maybe 100 people had crowded in from the street and the surrounding shops, drawn by the light of the fire from within. Some wore expressions of concern, others of morbid excitement, all of them pointing at the lobby, murmuring and speculating. What's happening in there? Since when do hospitals catch fire? There are people burning inside. This is terrifying. Where are the fire trucks? Why haven't they arrived? Where's security? A fire that big and the security guards are just. Frightened whispers, curious questions, and anxious shouts blended into one wall of chaotic noise. The owners and staff of the nearest shops reacted quickly. They grabbed fire extinguishers from their stores and charged over. Seeing several fire corpses come chasing out after Tomi, they immediately raised the extinguishers and aimed at the burning figures. Hiss, hiss. Thick jets of white dry powder chemical agent blasted out, coating the burning fire corpses and smothering the flames on their bodies. The dead convulsed in violent coughing fits as the powder choked them, their movements growing sluggish. Walnut Chan, winky face. New history, group chat of the dead. White heavy checkmark jump 40 chapters ahead of the public release. White heavy checkmark get access to special perks and news. Help smash these goals. 100 power stones equals +1 bonus chapter for everyone. Walnut Chan, don't forget to like and subscribe to Novels Wonderland.